Most men spend their entire lives waiting for happiness to arrive, never once realizing they buried it themselves. That is the great hidden crime of the human spirit. Not that life is hard, but that a man stands in the middle of difficulty and uses that difficulty as his excuse to stop living fully. He tells himself, when this passes, I will be happy. When I have enough money, I will be happy. When the critics are quiet, when the storm clears, when the season changes, then, and only then, will he permit himself the feeling he was born to carry every single day of his life. I want you to hear this plainly because I have spent the better part of my life studying the men and women who conquered their circumstances, and I have found one truth that towers above all others. Happiness is not the reward for a life well lived. It is the fuel. It is not waiting at the destination. It is the force that gets you there. And the man who postpones his happiness until his conditions improve has made a silent, unconscious decision to be miserable for the remainder of his days. This is not a small error. This is a fatal one. Think about what happens to a man who drifts, not the man who falls. Falling is honest, falling is human, falling can be recovered from. I mean the man who drifts. He wakes in the morning without purpose. He moves through his hours without intention. He reacts to the world rather than directing it. He has no definite chief aim burning in his chest, no clear image of what he is building, no single fixed point on the horizon toward which every thought, every action, every ounce of energy is aimed. He simply drifts. And the drifting man is the unhappiest creature alive because somewhere beneath the numbness, beneath the routine, beneath the years of small surrenders, he knows. He knows he was built for more than this. That knowing is the voice of your potential speaking to you. And most men drown it in distraction. I have studied over 500 of the most successful individuals this world has ever produced. I sat with Andrew Carnegie and learned from him the architecture of organized thought. I watched Thomas Edison work through failure after failure, not as a man broken by defeat, but as a man energized by the search. I observed Henry Ford build an empire not from genius alone, but from the unshakable belief that what he imagined could be made real. And in every single case, without one exception, I found this: the men who achieved the most were not the men who had the easiest lives. They were the men who chose deliberately, with full awareness, to bring their full spirit to each day, regardless of what that day brought them. That is the first thing I need you to understand. Happiness is a choice, not a passive one, not an easy one, an active, disciplined daily choice that requires the same kind of strength as any other great human effort. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, but you don't know what I'm going through. And you are right. I do not. But I know this: the man who makes his happiness conditional on his circumstances has surrendered control of his life to forces outside himself. And any man who surrenders that control has surrendered everything. Because the one thing no circumstance, no enemy, no failure, no tragedy can ever take from you, unless you give it away, is the power to decide how you will meet this moment. That power is yours. It has always been yours. The question is whether you are using it. Let me tell you about a man whose name most of you will never know. He came from nothing. Not the romantic kind of nothing people describe in speeches. I mean genuine poverty, the kind that follows a family like a shadow, generation to generation, until the family stops looking back and simply accepts the dark. He grew up watching his father work without hope and his mother worry without rest. He left school before he was old enough to truly miss it, because there was work to be done and mouths to feed. And in that world, dreams were a luxury no one in his household could afford. By the time he was 30, he had tried and failed at 3 separate businesses. Each one had consumed years of his life and every dollar he managed to save. The third failure cost him not just money, but his marriage, and he found himself living in a single room above a hardware store in a small town, working a job he despised for a wage that barely covered his rent. Here is where most men break. Here is where the drift begins. Here is where a man looks at his life, measures the distance between what he dreamed and what he has, and decides, without ever saying the words aloud, that he is finished, that the universe has spoken, that he is not one of the chosen ones. But this man did something unusual. He did something that in that moment must have seemed almost irrational. He sat down in that small room above the hardware store, took out a piece of paper, and he wrote down, clearly, specifically, without apology, what he wanted his life to look like. Not what he thought was possible, not what people like him were supposed to want, what he wanted, what his soul had been whispering to him through all the failures and all the grief. He wrote it down. He read it every morning, he read it every night, and he began with whatever small actions were available to him in that small life to move toward it. 7 years later, that man had rebuilt everything, not because luck found him, not because circumstances suddenly smiled, but because he made the decision, a real decision, not a wish, to stop waiting for his life to change and to begin changing his life. The happiness he chose in that small room was not the happiness of a man whose problems were solved. It was the happiness of a man who finally knew what he was doing and why. That clarity alone transformed him. I tell you that story because I want you to understand that the philosophy I am sharing with you is not theory. It is not the kind of wisdom that sounds beautiful but dissolves when tested. It is the distilled truth of lives actually lived, of men who stood exactly where you are standing, looked at exactly what you are facing, and found a way through. Now let us speak about the enemies of this daily happiness, because they are real, and they are cunning, and if you do not name them, they will own you without your knowledge. The first enemy is fear, not the sharp, honest fear of physical danger. That fear is useful. It keeps you alive. I mean the slow, corrosive fear of what other people will think, the fear of criticism, the fear of standing apart from the crowd. This fear has destroyed more human potential than any financial panic, any war, any natural disaster in the history of civilization. It operates silently. It disguises itself as wisdom. It says, be careful, be realistic, don't reach too far, don't let them see you try and fail. And the man who listens to that voice spends his life performing smallness for an audience that isn't even watching. Let me be direct with you about the crowd. The crowd is not your enemy, but the crowd is not your guide either. The crowd drifts. The crowd follows. The crowd adopts the opinions and habits of whoever spoke loudest last. Most men in the crowd are no more certain of what they believe than a flag is certain of which direction it is pointing. They simply blow in whatever wind is strongest at any given moment. And if you wait for the crowd's permission to pursue your happiness, to pursue your purpose, to live at the full height of what you are capable of, you will wait forever. That permission will never come, because the crowd does not reward the man who rises above it. The crowd resents him, criticizes him, and then, only after he has succeeded despite them, claims him as one of their own. Do not seek permission. Do not seek approval. Seek clarity. The second enemy is indecision, and it is more dangerous than most men realize because it does not feel like surrender. It feels like caution. It feels like responsibility. The indecisive man believes he is being thorough, being careful, waiting for more information before he commits. But what he is truly doing is allowing his future to be decided by default, by the slow accumulation of days in which he chose nothing and therefore drifted into whatever was easiest. Every great man I have ever studied was a fast and firm decision maker. Andrew Carnegie made decisions quickly and changed them slowly. The men who worked for him knew where they stood because Carnegie always knew where he stood. He had a definite chief aim, a single, consuming, clearly defined purpose. And every decision he made was measured against that aim. Does this move me toward it or away from it? That was the question. And when the answer was clear, the decision was made immediately. This does not mean recklessness. It means that the man with a definite chief aim has a compass, and the compass makes navigation possible even in storms. What is your definite chief aim? I mean your real one, not the acceptable one, not the one you share in polite company, not the scaled-down version you retreated to after your original dream was criticized. The one that lives beneath all of that. The one that keeps you awake some nights, not with anxiety, but with something closer to fire. That is the one I am asking about. If you do not have it clearly formulated, that is the first work. Not the motivational reading, not the planning, not the strategizing. The first work is to find the aim. To sit alone in silence and ask yourself honestly, what do I want my life to stand for? What would I build if I were not afraid? What would I pursue if failure carried no shame? What does success actually look like to me? Not to my father, not to my neighbor, not to the society I was raised in, but to me. Write it down, make it specific, give it a deadline, read it twice a day until it is no longer a thought but a hunger. Because here is what thought does when it is focused. Here is the mechanism that every great achiever has discovered and used, whether they could articulate it in these terms or not. The mind moves toward whatever it holds most consistently and most vividly in its attention. This is not mysticism. This is observable human mechanics. The thoughts you feed with your daily attention shape your decisions. Your decisions shape your habits. Your habits shape your results. Your results shape your life. It all begins with thought, which means it all begins with you, right now in this moment, choosing what to hold in your mind. You think it, you feel it, you act on it, you become it. This is why the man who spends his waking hours rehearsing his grievances, cataloging his failures, dwelling on what has been taken from him, will find more grievance, more failure, more loss. Not because the universe is punishing him, but because his attention is a magnet, and he has aimed it at exactly the things he does not want. And this is equally why the man who fixes his mind on what he is building, who holds that image with clarity and feeling, who carries his definite chief aim not as a distant fantasy, but as a present, burning certainty, will begin to notice opportunities he previously walked past, to attract the cooperation of people he previously ignored, to find paths forward through terrain he previously thought impassable. This is faith, not blind faith, not passive faith, faith through action, the kind of faith that does not wait for proof before it moves because it understands that the proof comes from the movement. You do not wait until you feel confident to act. You act, and the acting builds the confidence. You do not wait until the fear is gone to move forward. You move forward, and the moving diminishes the fear. Before I continue, answer one question honestly. When did you last wake up in the morning and decide, before your feet hit the floor, before the weight of the day arrived, that this day was going to matter? That regardless of what it brought you, regardless of what went wrong or stayed broken or refused to cooperate, you were going to show up fully, think clearly, act with purpose, and find something in this one day to build upon. If you're still listening, something inside you is waking up. Good. Let it wake. Do not rush it back to sleep with distraction or doubt. Let it rise, because that thing stirring in you is not naivety. It is not the reckless optimism of a man who does not understand how hard life can be. It is the oldest, deepest instinct of human nature, the instinct to create, to build, to become, to matter. That instinct is not wrong. That instinct is you at your truest. Now I want to talk about persistence, because no philosophy of achievement is complete without it, and most men misunderstand what it actually requires. Persistence is not stubbornness. It is not the refusal to learn from experience or to adapt your methods when they are not working. Persistence is something quieter and more powerful than that. It is the unwillingness to accept permanent defeat. It is the understanding that every failure is a lesson wearing a disguise, every setback contains information, and every obstacle, correctly understood, is showing you exactly where your approach needs to be refined. Thomas Edison tried over 10,000 different approaches before he found the material that would work as a filament in his electric light. 10,000. When a reporter asked him how he felt about having failed 10,000 times, Edison looked at the man with what I can only describe as genuine puzzlement and said, "I have not failed 10,000 times. I have successfully discovered 10,000 ways that do not work. Every single one of those attempts taught him something. Every single one narrowed the field of what remained to be tried. And in each of those attempts, he brought the same focused energy, the same organized method, the same burning belief that the answer existed and that he would find it." That is not the behavior of a man waiting to be happy. That is the behavior of a man who carries his happiness inside him, who does not loan it out to his circumstances, who understands that the searching itself, the building itself, the daily act of bringing his full self to a worthy cause, that is the richness of life, not the moment of arrival, the journey. This is the great secret that achievement teaches every man who stays long enough to learn it. It is not the having, it is the becoming. The man you are forced to become in the pursuit of a great aim, that man is the reward. The discipline you build, the courage you develop, the creative force you discover within yourself when comfort is stripped away and only the goal remains, that is what you keep forever, long after the goal itself is either achieved or revised. I think of Henry Ford. Here was a man who, by the standards of his era, had no right to dream what he dreamed. He was the son of a farmer. He had no formal engineering education that would impress the experts of his day. When he announced his intention to build a practical, affordable automobile for the common man, he was met with the full force of the established world's skepticism. The bankers doubted him. The engineers doubted him. Competitors publicly dismissed him. There was a period, early in the development of what would become the Model T, when his company had essentially no money, when workers had not been paid, when the entire enterprise existed on nothing but Ford's certainty that it would work. And in those months, those lean, frightening months when any reasonable man would have conceded defeat, Ford kept moving. He kept planning. He kept refining. He called meetings. He solved problems. He made decisions, not because he had no fear, Ford was human, he felt the fear, but because his definite chief aim was stronger than his fear. His vision of what he was building was more vivid, more real to him than the obstacles in his path. The day came when the plant operated. The day came when the automobile rolled off the line, affordable, reliable, available to the families of working men across the nation. And when people celebrated Ford's success, they tended to celebrate the product. But Ford himself, I believe, knew that the real achievement had happened years before, in those frightened, broke, uncertain months when he chose to persist. Persistence is not passive. It is the most active thing a man can do. It is the daily renewal of commitment. It is the morning decision every morning to get up and try again with everything you have. But persistence without organized planning is simply exhaustion. This is why so many sincere, hard-working men fail, not from lack of effort, but from lack of direction. They work hard in the wrong direction for years and then conclude that hard work does not pay. Hard work pays enormously, but only when it is intelligently organized around a definite aim. What does organized planning look like? It begins with the end. You know where you are going. You write it down specifically. Then you work backward. What needs to happen for me to arrive there? What do I need to learn? What relationships do I need to build? What habits must I form, and which ones must I discard? What is the single most important action I can take today that moves me one step closer? One step every day, just one step in the right direction. Most men overestimate what they can accomplish in a month and catastrophically underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade of consistent, organized effort aimed at a definite chief aim. 10 years of one step per day is 3,650 steps in the right direction towards something that matters to you. Do you understand the distance that covers? And here is where we return to the question of happiness. Because I want to dismantle one more false belief before we reach the end of this conversation, and it is perhaps the most damaging belief of all. Some men believe that pursuing happiness is selfish, that a serious, responsible man has no business concerning himself with whether he feels alive and purposeful and joyful in his work. He should be practical. He should be realistic. He should do what needs to be done and find his satisfaction in duty alone. This belief has crippled generations of capable men and left behind it a trail of quiet desperation that no amount of external success can conceal. The man who has disconnected himself from his own inner life, who has traded his genuine desires for the appearance of responsibility, is not more effective. He is less. He is operating on a fraction of his potential because the deepest fuel of human achievement is not discipline. It is not intellect. It is not even ambition. It is passion, the burning, specific, personal love for what you are building and who you are becoming. When a man works from passion, he works differently. He thinks about his work when no one is watching. He solves problems in the middle of the night because the problem interests him genuinely. He brings a quality of attention to his craft that no amount of external incentive can purchase, because it comes from inside, from the alignment between what he does and what he truly values. You want to know the fastest way to become excellent at something? Love it. Care about it deeply, specifically, personally, not in the abstract, in the particular. Not I love success, but I love this specific problem I am trying to solve. Not I want to be wealthy, but I want to build this particular thing that serves people in this particular way. The specificity of genuine love is what focuses the mind, sustains the effort, and produces the quality of work that gets noticed and rewarded. This is not soft philosophy. This is mechanics. Carnegie loved the building of enterprises. Edison loved the discovery of solutions. Ford loved the democratization of mobility. Their love was not incidental to their achievement. It was the engine of it. Now, what about the days when that love is hard to find? What about the days when the work is grinding and unglamorous and nothing is going right, and the distance between where you are and where you want to be feels not like inspiration but like mockery? Those days are real. I will not pretend otherwise. Every man who has ever built anything of significance has known those days, and on those days you do not feel your way to action. You act your way to feeling. You begin, not when you feel ready, not when the mood cooperates. You begin now with what you have from where you are. You take the single next action that your organized plan prescribes, and you take it with as much intention as you can gather in this moment. And something happens, not immediately, not dramatically, but reliably. The act of beginning generates momentum, and momentum generates feeling, and feeling feeds action, and action produces results, and results remind you why you started. Begin. That is the instruction. On the hardest days, the only instruction is begin. And push, I use this word deliberately, push yourself to be happy. Not the pretend happiness of a man who refuses to acknowledge difficulty. Not the performance of cheerfulness for an audience. I mean the real, purposeful, disciplined act of choosing to locate what is good in this day and to build on it. To find the small evidence of progress and let it mean something. To remember, even in the middle of struggle, that you are in motion, you are alive, you are working towards something that matters to you, and that is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything. This is what separates the men I have studied from the men who drift. It is not intelligence. It is not privilege. It is not the absence of hardship. Most of them had harder lives than the men who failed. It is the refusal to wait, the refusal to postpone the feeling of being fully alive until conditions are perfect, the understanding that conditions will never be perfect, that life will always carry difficulty alongside its beauty, and that the man who insists on the absence of difficulty as the prerequisite for his happiness has built his life on a condition that will never be met. Life is not hard or beautiful. It is hard and beautiful. It is painful and meaningful. It defeats you in one place and opens a door somewhere else if you are paying attention. Adversity, correctly met, is not the opposite of opportunity. It is the most reliable source of it, because adversity breaks open the surface of a comfortable life and reveals what is underneath. And what is underneath in every man who has not yet given up entirely is capability he has not yet used, strength he did not know he had, creativity that only arrives when the easy path is no longer available. Carnegie did not become Carnegie by accident. He was tested repeatedly, severely, and every time he was tested, he brought something to the test that lesser men did not. The unshakable conviction that this difficulty was not the end of his story, that it was material, that it was information, that it could be used. You have that same conviction available to you. You have it right now, in this moment. The question is whether you are going to claim it or whether you are going to continue waiting for a day that is easier before you decide to live at full strength. There is a man reading this, or a woman, it makes no difference, the principles respect no such distinctions, who has been waiting for years. Not lazily, not without pain, but waiting nonetheless. Waiting for the children to be older, the debt to be smaller, the relationship to be settled, the season to be better. Waiting for life to stop being complicated before beginning to build the life they actually want. To that person, I want to say this as plainly as I know how. The complications are not going to stop. The perfect moment is not coming. There will always be a reason to wait if you are looking for one. The children grow, but new responsibilities arrive. The debt shrinks, but new pressures emerge. Life is not a problem to be solved before living begins. It is the medium in which living happens. All of it. The complications included. Start now. Start inside the difficulty. Start with the noise and the uncertainty and the unresolved tension still fully present. Start imperfectly. Start small, but start. Because here is what you need to understand about time, and I will not soften this because it does not deserve softening. You are spending it either way. Every day that passes, whether you spend it in purposeful pursuit of your definite chief aim or in distracted, deferred half-living, is a day you will not get back. The man who drifts for 10 years and the man who builds for 10 years both spend the same 10 years. The difference between them at the end of that decade is not luck. It is not talent. It is the 10,000 daily choices to either push toward life or retreat from it. You are going to spend today. The only question is what you are going to spend it on. And I am telling you, from everything I have studied, from every life I have examined, from every principle I have spent my working life distilling into a form that another man could use, push yourself to be happy in it, not after it, in it. Push yourself to bring your full attention to this day. Push yourself to hold your definite aim clearly and act toward it with whatever is available to you right now. Push yourself to meet the hardness of life not with withdrawal and resentment, but with the fire of a man who has decided, not wished, not hoped, decided that this life is his to build. That is who you are becoming, not the man who waited, the man who decided. That decision is available to you right now, this moment. Before this day is over, before another season passes, before another year is added to the count of years in which you almost started, decide. The man who makes that decision, cleanly, completely, without the secret reservation that he might take it back if things get hard, that man changes. Something shifts in him that does not shift back. The world looks different to a decided man. Problems that seem like walls reveal themselves as doors. People who seemed like obstacles become resources. Opportunities that were always present begin to announce themselves because the decided man is finally paying the kind of attention that allows him to be found. This is not magic. This is the natural result of a mind finally aimed. Aim yours. Push yourself to be happy today, not because life has earned it, not because the circumstances deserve it, but because you are worth the full expression of what you carry inside you. And this day, this ordinary, difficult, imperfect, unrepeatable day, is the only day you have been given to use it.